Hello and welcome along to the series about Rugby League show. I'm Will Jackson. Joining me today is Peter Smith of the Yorkshire Evening Post. We've got Sam B and Sam C, Sam Brocksom, Sam Cook from the series about Rugby League. And just before we get into it, can I just ask you all to subscribe to the channel and like this video, please? It really helps us out. We're fresh off the back of the Ashes series. Obviously, Australia had a 3-0 whitewash over England. That will seal on Saturday. They beat England 30 points to 8 at Headingley. It's a result that probably many people expected at the start of the series, but sat here now, it feels like a tough pill to swallow. I really think England could and should have done better in the series. I thought Australia struggled. Australia were good, but they weren't the Australia that we expected. They gave England opportunities they gave England opportunities in games which England didn't take. Look, before we get into the elephant in the room that is Shaun Wane's future, Sam B, you were at Headingley on Saturday as a fan. What was your overriding emotion when you were leaving the game?
Probably underwhelming, but one that we expected. We've said it the last couple of weeks.
Can I just stop you there? Is that a tash that you've got on your face there?
Yeah, it is. It's Movember.
Go on,
Just doing my bit. Sorry if my Wi-Fi cuts out. It's a bit shoddy at the minute. But yeah, underwhelming, I think, but one that we expected. Nobody really thought that we were. Well, fans really thought that we were going to get anything other than 3-0, and that's what occurred. I think it slightly improved again, but yeah, the attack still wasn't great. The physicality, was better. Probably matched the Australians more than we did in the first two. But yeah, the attack wasn't there, and ultimately it cost us. You can't have that much territory, in the Australian good ball and not convert chances. Yeah, just disappointing. But hopefully, if the Ashes are to return the next 4 years, that we can improve from now and start to build, and compete with the Aussies when the next time comes.
Yeah, I think the attack was the thing that really frustrated me. Sat there at Headingley, obviously there was just no ideas. We're just crying out for someone to run a line or hit a gap or just. I don't know. When obviously we're in good ball, the line seemed so flat. It was so predictable, slow, easy to defend. Did that come through at home, Sam, while you were watching on telly?
Yeah, I think it was poor, like really poor, really. Just a lack of ownership in a sense, and not in the sense of I think players stepped up. And I think they played as if they were playing for England, but I think ownership in terms of actually taking the game by the scruff of the neck. We had Australia kind of camped on their line for probably 20 minutes in the second half, and I'm not sure. I think you could have camped there for another 20, another 14. I don't think the line would have broken. I think there just wasn't anyone willing to sort of really do anything. I think in game 2, when we saw any instance of that, it was basically George Williams either throwing a ball into touch or throwing to Tom Johnston, who had no space. So I'm not saying it's not been tried throughout the series. It's just when it has been tried, it's not been executed. But Australia were just willing to. I think they probably learned from Willie Peterson. They were almost happy to take 6 agains. They just lay on a little bit longer, take a new set. Anytime it got a bit dangerous, they just take a new set and then they just go again. And knowing that England weren't really going to throw anything that was particularly threatening, I think Harry Smith, I like his kicking game. But I think in terms of when you're in that sort of red zone, I'm not sure that he creates enough. Mikey Lewis was playing full back out of position, and I just think he just couldn't get enough going. George Williams, like I say, he struggled throughout. I think Jez Litton was the only real offensive spark. We saw that with the try. And I think it reminded me a lot of Before Leeds had Brad Arthur, I always used to say that they couldn't score when they had good ball. Like they were the sort of team that would score tries from 70, 80 yards out, like with good shifts wide. But once they actually got into good ball, they just seemed to struggle. And I think England looked like that. They just looked like a team with no real ideas on how to break it down. And I think it raises real questions about Lee Bruce, because St. Helens have had that issue all season nearly, and he's their attack coach, and he's England's attack coach, and I think that's one change I've been making, if not for Shaun Wane.
Yeah, let's get into it then. Pete, obviously, you were at the game as well. You sat in the press conference, you heard Shaun Wane say that he was adamant that he was the right man for the job to lead England into the World Cup next year. Do you agree with him? I think he has the backing of the group, of the players, of the coaching staff, but where do you think England go from here?
I think he has the backing of everybody in the camp. Yeah, you talk to the players, which you and I have both done after the matches, and on and off the record, they say they want him to stay. 100% is the phrase that they all seem to be saying. 100% we want him to stay on. I suppose in an interview you would expect them to say that, wouldn't you? But they're not saying off the record, "Oh, yeah, we're fed up with him." The problem we've got is it's a year till the World Cup. It's very short notice to be starting again, especially as there might not be a warm-up game between now and the World Cup. I think Wane, on balance, is probably likely to be coach for the World Cup. I don't think he's any intention of stepping down, and I'm just not sure that anyone at the RFL will grab the ball by the horns and remove him. I think after 5 years, it's time for a change. He got a lot wrong during this series. I've said in previous shows, I think he's got a lot of qualities, but I think he was caught out during this series with his tactics, and particularly his selection. He didn't pick players who clearly were in form. We all know who that is, or they are. There was more than one, and he picked players who weren't in form and expected them to go out and suddenly transform the way they were playing against the best team in the world, and they didn't do that. He's been in charge for 5 years and won Test series against Tonga and Samoa, but he failed to get to the final of the World Cup, which, when the draw was in England's favour, remember they didn't face, or had they gone all the way, they wouldn't have faced either Australia or New Zealand until the final, and they didn't get to the final. That was a catastrophic failure, really, on home soil. And they've gone into an Ashes series and lost 3-0, which, while we all thought that was probably what was going to happen, it's still not something that you can accept. And especially the fact that, although they were in every game at half-time, they never really looked like winning any of them. Way back in the last time we had an Ashes series, I think Great Britain were ahead. They lost 3-0, but they were ahead going into the last few minutes of each game. This time they didn't lead, and they never looked like getting the lead. One thing Shaun Wane said about Jake Connor was, I think it was after the Leeds had played Lee and beaten Lee in a really high-scoring game. I think it was 48-30. He said that, Connor played well in that one, but the week before against St. Helens, he was off, and you've got to be able to do it in big games and do it consistently. Well, England under Wane haven't done it consistently, have they? They've been okay in home series against Tonga and Samoa, who weren't the sides that they are at the moment. So certainly Samoa in the Test series weren't. But against Samoa in a World Cup final, when it really mattered, they didn't do it, and they've not done it against Australia. And I can't see them doing it against whoever they play in the World Cup next year. We're not going to win the World Cup. Are we going to get to the semi-final of the World Cup? We need a change. We need a coach who will pick players on form, who doesn't have preconceived ideas, and who will maybe just do something a little bit different. I use the the word risk avoidance last week, and it's just too safe. We didn't do anything that challenged Australia really over the 3 Test matches, or when we did, they had them. They struggled to cope. But for too long, they knew, or too much of the time, they knew exactly what was going to come at them, and they knew how to handle it, and they handled it without any difficulty, really. 20 minutes against 20 minutes in the 3rd Test at Headingley, the crowd got into it. England were only 4 points behind. They were throwing everything at Australia, but Australia knew what was coming, and I never really felt England were going to make the breakthrough. And of course, as soon as Australia got the ball back, they scored a couple of quick tries and turned what was quite a close game into a bit of a rout. And the effort's there, the spirit's there, the passion's there, but there's something lacking, and I'm not sure we're going to get that under Shaun Wane. I think they need probably a younger coach with fresher ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I personally speaking, I completely agree with you. I think I've seen enough now. The lack of tactical versatility in all 3 games. I think Wayne maybe set his tactics up at the start of the series and just never changed from them throughout, despite the fact that they weren't working in any of the games. I'm not convinced he got the best out of any player either during this series. Would you say that any player in this series was on top form for England? Maybe Jez Litton.
Yeah, Litton maybe. Morgan Knowles was good, but I don't think he was as good as he has been at Saints either. Yeah,
Litton was the one who obviously created that moment of magic that, that was the second try of the series for England.
Take what happened when we lost AJ Brimson, and that's a blow, losing your fullback after whatever it was, 10 minutes to a shoulder injury. Michael Lewis is on the bench. Michael Lewis comes on and goes to fullback where Brimson's gone off. And clearly, after about 5 minutes, you could tell that wasn't working. But he left it there. He didn't make another change. Didn't seem to know how to deal with the situation. There were changes that could have been made. I know you were saying, well, Farnworth to fullback and Watkins into the centre, and then move Mikey Lewis to his more natural role, but didn't do that, and it cost England, and there just seems to be that sort of set idea. There's no adapting to situations, and I think that's been costly.
Yeah, and it's easy to say now in hindsight, but picking Jake Connor, that would have covered that gap. That versatility there would have helped, wouldn't it?
Well, he can play central fullback. I mean, we all know he should have been in. He should have been in the squad. If you're going to pick on form, you pick the man of steel, don't you? If he's eligible, and he didn't. And yeah, he can cover a number of positions, and he would have done something that at some stage in the 3 tests that Australia weren't expecting, and nobody did that.
Yeah, I think if you'd have asked Willie Peters, I think he would have been rubbing his hands in delight that Jake Connor wasn't in that squad. If we're talking Wayne to go, then look, we touched on it last week, but replacements, Sam, who's out there? Who's the man to take that on?
I think you need to kind of get someone from a club. I'm not sure there's actually a coach that's completely out of work at the moment that would be available. I almost think as well, to an extent, I've mentioned it to you personally as well. I don't mind if we just get coaching changes. I think the selection needs to be done better. So I think Wayne probably goes on selection, but I'm not bothered if you just kind of bring in a high level attacking coach and a high level defensive coach. Paul Wellens has proven to be one of the better defensive coaches. He's going to be in the NRL this season. And I think he knows a lot of the England players. He's been in the England camp. I think he's an obvious choice for defensive coach. If you're making that change, I think attacking coach, like I referenced, St Helens have had issues all season. Granted, they've had a spine problem. England have had a spine problem. So Lee Breers, I'd say just wouldn't be who I'd be picking. I'd say get rid of him and potentially Paul Rowley. We've seen there's quite a few St Helens players in there, but again, it's the issue that Pete's mentioned where we don't have a warm-up test, we don't have a practice test. The players will probably be connecting. I mean, those who haven't made the grand final will be maybe connecting together, presumably Robin Park at Wigan, if it's still Shaun Wane. They'll be connecting sort of late September next year. Those who are in the grand final will join them maybe the 5th of October or so, and the grand final's the 3rd. So then they're going to be flying out to Australia. There's no time whatsoever for things to get implemented, which is why ultimately I think the RFL won't make the change, because they're just scared of action, which I think can probably be applied to the RFL for a lot of matters in terms of being scared of action. And I think that's it. But I think if you're making changes, you've got to look at everything. It's not just Shaun Wane, it's your attacking, your defensive. And I think Paul Rowley and Paul Wellens I'd like to see them involved, and potentially someone more almost neutral, like Willie Peters. I don't mind getting an Australian. I don't think that's an issue. Now, Michael Maguire's been touted. I don't see how that happens. But again, he's in an NRL environment, which means, and we've seen the NRL players for England perform the best. It's not a coincidence that those that are either in the NRL or NRL bound, like Morgan Knowles, performed better than some of the Super League players. It's just because you're playing against better players, you're more seasoned. And I think we don't necessarily, well, I think we all know it, but I'm not sure that those involved in selection seem to know it. I think Matty Nicholson, I'm not sure if there's an injury there, but he could have come across. Morgan Smithers should have been playing more often or more minutes. I also think, despite Callum Watkins having a very good game on Saturday, if you're looking ahead to the World Cup, I'm not sure why he was picked. I'm not saying Owen Trout's the answer for next year, but I think Callum Watkins, is he going to be 35 next year? I mean, yeah, he can do a job at 35, but I just think it's lacking. There just feels so many obvious fixes that haven't been made because they prefer to stay the course and just go safe, risk avoidance, like Pete says.
Yeah, you've touched on something there that Shaun Wane has mentioned quite a lot now towards the end of the series, in that England don't have a lot of high intensity games to play over the course of the season. Obviously, if you're in Australia, you've got state of origin, but week in, week out, the NRL seems to be at a higher standard than what the Super League is. Obviously, there's high intensity games in Super League, but not quite to the quantity as down under. Sam B, what's the solution? Would you like to see a War of the Roses type clash? Would that work, or should England play a mid-season game against France, but the intensity might not be there? It's a real difficult one, so I'm putting you on a spot. But what's the solution?
I think a mid-season test is crucial, even if it's not for the intensity, just to get them combinations working. And we mentioned last week, Yorkshire v Lancashire. If you do Yorkshire v Lancashire, you've got George Williams and Harry Smith on the Lancashire team, and Mikey Lewis and Jake Connor on the Yorkshire team. So they're back. You can start well there. So the competition for them type of places will be there, and it just gives England that, it's just a mission essentially. You find it players in those type of matches. But yeah, I think time constraints will be a problem. But a warm-up game before the World Cup. I think in the 2021 we played Fiji before the last one. I think we won quite comfortably there. I think the RFL have to put International Rugby League and England Rugby League at the forefront, and not as an afterthought as it's been this series. Australia have come over and really bought into this series and done all the meet and greets, all the open training sessions. England have done barely any of that, and I just think it's a bit of a we've missed an opportunity here that not only on the field we've failed to compete with them, but even off the field, just getting more, making England players a household name and just getting the sport out there on the international stage. And doing more international mid-season or whatever is just only going to benefit that.
Yeah, Pete, think combined nations all-stars might work? I mean, I think they beat England the last time they played in, I think it was 21. I think that was Shaun Wane's first game. You think that might work?
I don't know. I don't know what would work. I think we need a game, but the problem is we play France on a regular basis and it's fairly pointless, although you could say, well, France need more games like this to raise their level. Teams like Wales and Ireland aren't probably of the required standard. You could try combined nations. It didn't really work last time. The War of the Roses didn't work last time we tried it. That got axed. How about England against England Knights? I don't know what's happened to England Knights. They don't seem to exist at the moment. But then you get a wider number of players involved. It's like possibles against probables. It's players will be playing for their place in the overall squad. There might be a bit of intensity to that, and you get supposedly the best players who are available to play together, even if it's on two different sides. That might be an idea.
Could you go down under for a mid-season test, or is that too much strain on the players?
I think it's a lot. It's a lot to ask, isn't it, for a week? And the problem is that Super League is going to continue around it, isn't it? That we don't want to put the international team first as a game, unfortunately, and I think that makes it very difficult to go down under. Yeah, can I just going back to something you asked about the coach, Will, and how about? I think Willie. I have no idea if he'd want to do it, but I think Willie Peters or someone of that ilk would be a good choice. No one's mentioning Matt Peake, but he's a very successful young English coach who's obviously won a lot of trophies during his time at Wigan. I'd also get Brian McDermott, if he wants to do it, involved. He's now assistant coach at Gold Coast Titans in the NRL. He was at Newcastle Knights. He's been in the NRL for a few years, so he knows the players over there. He's involved every week. He sees how the English lads are getting on, and he'll have a good eye on the opposition, all the opposition. So I think there's 10 teams in next year's competition,
yeah.
And 8 of them are Southern Hemisphere, aren't they? There's only 2 European teams, England and France. And you look at Brian McDermott's record in terms of consistency when he was in charge of Leeds. It wasn't that great. I don't have the figures in front of me, but his record in knockout games is exceptional. It's something like 80% win record in knockout games, and he won the grand final, obviously, on a number of times. What was it? Was it 4 times? Was it? I think Leeds have won the grand final so many times I lose track. Something that you won't understand, Will, but never mind. He can come up with a game plan. Brian McDermott can come up with a game plan to win big games when the team isn't expected to. That is his real strength, and he did it consistently when he was at Leeds. Leeds had some incredible grand final victories and then incredible victories to get to grand finals when nobody gave them a chance. In Warrington's year in 2011, Leeds, who'd had a poor season, finished 5th, went to Warrington, who everybody thought were in the grand final. Warrington picked Leeds that year, remember, in Club Call, and Leeds went there and won, and that was, in my opinion, Leeds' greatest ever victory. The following year, same thing. They went to Wigan, who were top of the table, who picked them in Club Call, and they won. And they came up with exactly the right game plan on both occasions. They did it in the grand finals, a number of grand finals. They won the treble under McDermott in 2015. I don't think you could have an Australian-based head coach, but I'd certainly get him involved for the World Cup if he's willing to do that. Yeah,
the names we've all mentioned here they all seem to be in jobs already. Does that matter? Does his England coach have to be the full-time England coach?
What does he need a full-time England coach for? He don't have any games. What's he going to be doing all season? Sadly, I mean, in an ideal world, yeah, but sadly, there isn't a need for him to be full time. I don't think you want somebody who's involved in the one of the comps, in my opinion, and I think I think it's something that can be done by somebody who's in a job at the moment.
Yeah. I had a conversation with a journalist on Saturday whilst watching the game who was convinced that a team like Papua New Guinea would come and roll over England at this point with performing the way they are. I disagreed based on the evidence of the last 2 years. Tonga have come here, Samoa have come here, and we've whitewashed them. Are we being a bit harsh on England? Are England still a top 3 nation?
Maybe. I think it's just based. It's that spine. Honestly, that spine is just they can't win games properly with that spine at the moment. I think, and that's what rugby league really comes down to. Like most of the time, in these sort of games where there isn't that much of a difference. Like you look at PNG, they're like Lachlan Lamb's 40 assists this season, something daft. Edwin Apapa, him and Jez Litton probably the two best hookers in Super League, but Apapa will come after you and really hit you. I think Nene McDonald, I'm not sure if he played in the centres or at fullback for them, but like he's an absolute talent. I think I look at that and they seem to have a benefit of the fact that they just play a lot as well. England, like a lot of them are all playing for PNG Hunters or together, and I think England would win that game, but I don't think it'd be as convincing as a lot of people would expect. And I think it is but I also to an extent think England would be willing to play more expansively with the ball. I think they were scared against Australia at times. I think that's why you kind of saw just almost like just a lack of shit. They seemed to be surprised that they'd got that much possession and territory and they didn't really actually do anything with it. I think against PNG, they probably expect to have the ball a lot more and they'd probably get a better game plan. But I think if you're looking at it, with the way that a lot of Australian-based players are going to go play for their heritage nations, I'm pretty sure that England have maybe not fallen down the rankings, but teams 4, 5, and 6, Samoa, Tonga, and PNG have all closed the gap massively. And depending on what the format is for next year's World Cup, which we still don't know, still don't have any dates for, which in itself shows the issue of international rugby league. Depending on what the format is, there's a chance England don't make it out of the group stage. There's a chance that England don't win a knockout game. I think you kind of I wouldn't back England in too many of those fixtures, to be honest. I do think they probably could beat PNG, but I'm not. Last year I'd have kind of laughed at the suggestion, but this year I'm kind of thinking, well, maybe.
Yeah, just in terms of player performances, then we've briefly touched on it, but who would your player of the series be for England? Who's emerged with credit and who's struggled really? Who are the losers of the series? All three of you, really.
William has to be the best one in terms of England. Not only just for that moment of magic to set up William, but I think he was the best. He was better than Clark, even though Clark scored. But yeah, I think he was the one that took it to the Aussies and was the only one that really had some sort of attacking game plan. His quick rucks were kind of what set up England for that good territory. We just didn't capitalise on it. So I think certainly him. Again, like Sam said, I won't take Watkins to the next World Cup, but I do think Watkins has performed quite well in John Bateman's absence. He was probably one of the best at Everton and probably one of the best at Headingley as well. In terms of losers, obviously you've got the obvious ones of Wellesby, Williams, Bateman, even though the last two he was injured. But I think majority have underperformed rather than performed to expectations.
Agree with that, Pete?
Yeah. I'd mention Herbie Farnworth as well. I thought his NRL experience showed. I thought he had a good series. Matty Lees did pretty well, especially at Everton. I thought he was okay on Saturday as well. Other than that, you are struggling a little bit, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think Mike McMeekin.
Oh, Morgan Smithies. I think Morgan Smithies, sorry, I should have mentioned him. Should have played in the first test and should have got more game time overall. I think he made a difference when he came on.
Yeah. Pete, I mean, it's something that I've mentioned a couple of times already, but this Australia team, they've picked up a bit of flack down under for their performances. Is that fair? I mean, they've won the series 3-0, but do you think this Australia team is underwhelmed?
Well, I was saying to you on Saturday World, someone, I won't name him, but a very senior media person who's been around a long time was saying it was the poorest Australian team he'd seen for 50 years. I'm not sure if that's the case. They've got some very good individuals. I don't think they ever needed to play out the best. They were always had another gear in them, and when they needed to step up, they did in all three tests. Cleary's getting a lot of stick, isn't he, for not really dominating. He probably was a bit underwhelming, but I mean, it's not the best Aussie team we've seen. I'm not sure it's the worst, but you know, they're better than we are. They do have some very good players. Obviously, Walsh had his ups and downs, didn't he? But he's a real fun player to watch. I'd like to watch someone like that play every week. I like Munster. I thought he was. I didn't get a vote for Player of the Series, but he would have been my pick. I think Harry Grant's a class act as well. And on the subject of Australians, I just wonder, has anybody seen Will and Patrick Carrigan in the same room at the same time?
I got not mistaken. I had that comparison twice when I was making my way from the press box to the press conference on Saturday. Well, speaking of Patrick Carrigan, he's going to be in Hull in February for the World Club Challenge. Hull KR Brisbane at the MKM Stadium. That's been confirmed. Sam, as a Rovers fan, can Willie Peters' side do the unthinkable and pick up a fourth trophy in 9 months and beat the best team in the world in Brisbane?
I'd have more faith in that than I had in England winning any of the Ashes games, to be honest. I think I'm not saying, they're going to go win it, but I think they've definitely got a chance. I think the last two World Cup challenges prove that the gap is big, but it's not as big as people make out. I think you can do it. KR will obviously play Challenge Cup in the round 3 Challenge Cup. They played their opening Super League game, and then that is it, I think. So they'll have had a couple of games. I'm not sure that Brisbane will have played. I'm not sure what the NRL calendar looks like, but they might have had a couple of their pre-season challenge games. So I think KR you'd think would be more prepared. I think, it's not home advantage and it's not their stadium, but they're used to winning there. So I think going to get a good crowd there. The key battle is basically how do you deal with Payne Haas? I know there's Reece Walsh and there's a lot more than
if he's there and he hasn't.
Well, if he's there, it's true. Yeah. But the forward pack is where you'd be looking at potentially for the game being won. I think if you look at Wigan's performance, I think it was it Harvey Hurtle in that game was absolutely exceptional. I mean, he's obviously actually going to be playing at the MKM this year, but I think Willie Peters has got enough about him to create a game plan that can really disrupt the visitors. And I'm not saying I'm hopeful, but I do think that there's a good chance. And I think even if it's a blowout to an extent, I think KR aren't the sort of team that fold. I'm not sure we've seen Wakefield in round 25 or so. was a really poor performance. I'm not sure there's been too many, and we at the end of the season in bad form, but come the grand final, there were levels above Wigan. So I think there's definitely enough there. Mikey Lewis, you're going to see him in his natural position, which is just chalk and cheese from playing as the kicking half or a fullback. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be excited about. I think there's just the fact that the games have made the game happen is massive, not just for Hull KR and Brisbane, but like for Super League and the NRL. I think it shows a real commitment. Hull KR are kind of one of the teams that are they obviously abstained from voting on the expansion. They seem to be more. I think if you were going to poll teams and say would you want NRL involvement, they're probably one of the teams that might lean yes. And I think they've kind of worked. They've really worked to get this game on, and I think that's important. I think it could affect them come Vegas. I think Leeds are probably now favourites for Vegas as a result of that, and obviously KR are going to have to catch up a game later in the season at some point. But the fact it's going ahead is massive. It was a real shame it didn't go ahead last year, but I think roll on February 19th.
Yeah, Pete, as you rightly mentioned, Leeds have won a fair few grand finals in your time. Means they've played a lot of World Cup challenges. What does it take to win a game like this? And does it come at the right time of year for Hull KR in terms of I think the NRL season starts the week after. So did it catch them cold?
Potentially. That has happened in the past. Hull KR obviously will be a bit more match ready. It's a difficult one. The English clubs are sort of on a loser. Whatever happens, really. If they lose, it's proof that the NRL's superior. Blah blah. And if the English clubs win, it's just because the Aussies couldn't be bothered. They were here for a holiday or whatever, or it's the start of their season, or however many excuses you want to roll out. It's interesting, isn't it, that the Penrith dynasty are rated as one of the greatest NRL sides of all time. Well, they didn't win the World Club Challenge, did they? They were beaten on the home ground by Saints, and they lost over here to Wigan. I'd fancy Hull KR's chances on home turf in home conditions in February. It's not going to be a balmy evening, is it? In Hull, mid-February, everything is in their favour, but they'll have to play well. It's as simple as that. If they play well and Brisbane play well, it'll be a heck of a game. We're looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. I went with when Leeds played in Melbourne in 2018. I was lucky enough to go to that, and it's hard for the visiting team. We were there, I think, 6 days, and it's hard. Everything is in favour of the home side. It'll be a good achievement by Brisbane if they can win it. But let's hope Hull KR do, because that'll be a little bit of a shot in the arm for the English game after this disappointing Ashes series.
Yeah, Sam B, obviously the World Cup Challenge has been on the calendar, off the calendar. Obviously COVID's played a role in that as well over the last few years, but how pleased are you to see that Brisbane have made concessions? They're coming over here to get the World Cup Challenge on.
Yeah, it's great, and I think it's good to see that more NRL teams are wanting to play the fixture. Obviously, Penrith came over in 23 to play Wigan, and now Brisbane are coming over. So I think it's only narrowing that gap, not on field, but certainly like partnerships between the NRL and Super League, and yeah, just having it back on the calendar. It's another big event that rugby league should be able to capitalise on. We say that Challenge Cup and Grand Final are the only two that the league has really got, but I think World Cup Challenge, even if you're not a Hull KR fan, you should be trying to go to support Super League, and you're also seeing the best players in the world on both sides of the world, in the same game. So yeah, I think it's only a good thing that it's back, and long may it continue.
It'd be
I want to.
It'd be better, wouldn't it, if we could play it out the end of the season rather than the start of the next one. Then you get the two teams that have actually or the two sets of players that have actually won it competing against each other. Logistically, obviously, that's difficult with international matches and so on. But I think that would be the ideal. But it should be a prestigious thing. The obvious thing to do is play it in Vegas if we're going to persist with Vegas, really. But again, I don't know the logistics of that. But that'd be a great occasion, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and just in terms of Super League fans getting out and supporting the Super League team, it's ironically being played in the one part of the world that won't be supporting the Super League team in West Hull. Pete, just as one last bit of news, obviously you broke last week that Ethan O'Neill of Lee Leopards is on the verge of signing for Leeds Rhinos. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, Leeds are obviously looking for a back rower, second rower, with two of them having left, James Bentley unexpectedly and Morgan Gannon. I understand that they've offered a 3-year deal to O'Neill, and while I don't think it's actually signed, or it wasn't last time I checked, it looks like he's going to take it. Be a good addition. Australian, one of those players who was on the fringes of the NRL, played a lot of Queensland Cup and then New South Wales Cup without quite making the breakthrough to the top level, but he's come over and done really well for the Leopards. Got left out of the team towards the end of the season. I think that's probably prompted the move, the fact that Leeds have offered him a long-term deal. When we ran the story last week on social media, there was a lot of reaction from Lee fans saying, "Oh no, we don't want him to go," which is always a good sign from Leeds' point of view. He's exactly what they need, I think, and he doesn't count on the quota actually, because his dad, Julian O'Neill, played over here, and though he was born in Sydney, I believe, he played his first rugby in this country and doesn't count as a quota player. So that's a bonus. I'd expect that to be announced within the next few days. Rhinos are in for testing on Friday, and then their pre-season actually begins next Monday. And I think they've not announced any signings yet, but I think there'll be one or two to come over the next couple of weeks, maybe 3.
Yeah, obviously. Well, with Gannon going, James Bentley going, that back row spot was one that needed filling, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. They've got James McDonnell. Callum Watkins could potentially play there next year, which would open up the 13 slot for Cameron Smith. They've got a couple of young players who might get a bit of game time next year. Zach Lloyd is someone to watch out for. He did really well for Sam Brocksom will know this. He did really well for the reserves and academy. Big lad, got a lot of potential. I think he'll come into the first team squad and be knocking on the door. I think Leeds will probably make 3 or 4 signings and bring a similar number up from the academy ranks into the first team. But I think O'Neill's potentially a good replacement for Bentley stroke Gannon, and he'll be in from the start of pre-season if it all gets done in time, and that'll be good. One thing about Leeds, I just wonder who's going to be the backup half, because they haven't got one at the moment. So I'll be very interested to see if they bring someone in, a specialist half. I would think probably not, but I think they need someone who can play there, because at the moment, if Connor or Brodie Croft get injured or suspended or something, I just can't see who's going to step in. So that's something they've got to sort out. But they've got all pre-season to work on that, which is a good thing.
Just on that, I think that's a really interesting thing with the expansion teams, because you've seen a lot of players who typically or have been backup halves. I'm talking Rowan Mills and Danny Richardson mainly, go to the expansion teams. Danny Richardson obviously going to York and Milnes back to Bradford. So the market or that position, I think you'll have a lot of players who were backups last year kind of think, well, actually I can just go get a starting spot now, which then obviously impacts. So players like Jack Farriman potentially at Wigan become even more valuable, because he's obviously only going to want to get more game time as he ages. So I think that's. I'm not saying Jack Farman's going to leave Wigan, but I think he becomes a player with real value. Obviously, Wakefield have got quite a few as well now that they signed Jack Sinfield. So Oliver Russell might be he also. I mean, he'll probably want to start. And I know he was signed on a 3-year deal at Wakefield, but having not played much last season and with Jack Sinfield coming in now, he might be the next sort of cab off the rank in terms of a backup half, whether that be at Leeds. Back to Huddersfield's also an option. I think players like him that kind of mix it and don't get too many games are the ones to watch over the next few months in terms of where they go or where they end up if they are on the move.
Yeah. Just one last one on Ethan O'Neill. Sam, how much of a blow is that for Lee, losing a player of his quality?
Which one?
Sam Brocksom.
Sam C.
Well, Sam C was sorry. I think it's a big blow. I think I really liked him at the start of the year. I think he's got a massive aerial threat. I think lock on land with his kicking game. You saw him grab quite a few tries. He's just a big back row. And Nsemba does it a lot for Wigan. O'Neill's nowhere near as tall as Nsemba or probably anywhere near as athletic, but he makes a real menace of himself getting up there. I think he's just very industrious. I'm surprised that they've allowed him or they've entertained offers, etc. I think it didn't really. He was injured and then just never found his way back into the team, and I didn't really understand why. I think it was you kind of just kept saying, "Oh well, this will be the week that he's back. This will be the week that he's back," and he just never came back into it. So for him, it makes sense to look elsewhere. But I think Lee have got a few signs to this. I mean, they've already recruited in the pack, so I think whilst Chris Chester's not there anymore, they've still got his sort of. He's recently enough departed that they know what the recruitment is. They don't often get wrong on recruitment, Lee. So I think it's probably if they're happy for him to go, then I think there's clearly a reason why. So I don't think Lee fans should be too concerned. But admittedly, it is a big blow in terms of the quality of player he is. But I think you've got to trust in Adrian Lam, who's proven to be very, very savvy operator in terms of this recruitment and retention.
Yeah, right. I think that will do us. Obviously, we'll try to be here every Monday over the off season. I mean, pre-season's already started for some teams, as Pete said. Pre-season starts soon for Leeds as well. But if you hit the subscribe button, you'll be notified every time we drop a video. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Cheers. Thanks for joining us. Please like and share, and we'll see you next week.